Good afternoon, and welcome to BBC2.
And if it's classic animation of less serious battles you want, here's a feast of some more of the best films of that indomitable duo, Tom and Jerry.
This is BBC2. Now we continue our Indian tale of love and war, Mahabharat.
A Rake's Progress now on BBC2 as Albert Finney romps his way through 18th century England. The Hollywood UK season continues with one of British cinema's greatest successes, Tom Jones. Now on BBC2, Michael Fish presents Weather View. More from our Ingrid Bergman collection now on BBC2. A decadent lifestyle is about to be brought into check in dollar. Julian Pettifer reports for Nature Now on 2 on the EC battle between job preservation and fish conservation.
Now on BBC2, Eddie and Richie are feeling lucky.
Now on BBC2, it's time to go out and about with Auntie Mabel and Pippin, so come outside. A threat to interplanetary peace now on BBC2, but the world does have one man who could save it from destruction.
Big problem for tiny Troy now, BBC2 in Stingray. acclaimed film from British director Anthony Harvey, now on BBC2, with Harvey Keitel joining the stars of Eagle's Wing.
A new life form beams in from the Gamma Quadrant, now on BBC2, and for DS9, the game is about to begin.
Continuing the Frank Sinatra season as he stars as a man fresh out of the army in Some Came Running in a few minutes here on BBC2, after a view on the man himself from Harvey Keitel.
Now on BBC2, heading down to Alan Titchmarsh at Chelsea.
With growing American realization that it was going to be a long and bitter war with much loss of life, memories and images of the world at war, now on BBC2 Wales.
A classic film comedy begins this afternoon's matinee, now on BBC2. Jane Fonda and Robert Redford star in Barefoot in the Park.
On the funny side of the fence, now on BBC2, a windbreak war threatens the harmony of the good life.
Mini techno warriors tear into each other first on BBC2 in Robot Wars.
Today was the opening day of the Masters Snooker, and BBC2 has the highlights with David Vine.
Press of a field day in the good life in 45 minutes on BBC2 Wales. First, a bizarre cult and a dangerous foe for Kira, DS9.
Tonight's programmes are running late because of an extra programme of sport, so our apologies for the delay. But now on BBC2, based on the work of Edgar Allan Poe, a film directed by Roger Corman and starring Vincent Price.
Vecchio's in love, but surprise, surprise, it's not straightforward. Due south in 25 minutes on BBC2, followed by All Saints in the Ozone at 7:10. First, Doctor Who's in a spot of bother.
BBC Learning Zone opens at 3 o'clock on BBC2, but for now, have a good weekend if you can, and good night.
This is BBC2 doing it your way with Deep Space Nine.
Time for me to make tracks now. Don't forget there's GCSE bite-sized revision here on BBC2 in an hour. That's after some pages from CFAX. Well, bowing out in a blaze of glory, tonight's been my last late shift for the BBC, so a final chance for me to say take care and have a very good night.
Now on BBC2, bringing together the contemporary stars of opera to pay tribute to a genius in the centenary year of his death.
Barcelona-Liverpool match of the day live on BBC One in just over 5 minutes. Here on BBC2, the real Robinson Crusoe.
This is BBC2 and I hope you're hungry. Jamie Oliver's cooking up a curry extravaganza in half an hour. And right now, Gary Rhodes is making a start with a few savouries.
Simpsons double now on BBC2, and this time he's gone too far. Bart's facing deportation.
Hospital visiting now on BBC2 with Laurel and Hardy.
Look your last now, because the face of BBC2 is changing forever as of tomorrow morning. To take us into the new world, an old but well-respected film from director Robert Wise.
Newsnight now on BBC2 with Jeremy Paxman in Manchester and Gavin Esler in London.
Top Gear in an hour on BBC2. First, it's election night with David Dimbleby and Peter Snow.
They call him Fast Eddie. He's a winner, he's a loser, he's a pool shark. Paul Newman is the hustler here on BBC2 in half an hour.
Joe Swift.
A secret dating back to Roman times uncovered in the Fens. We're talking landscapes in half an hour after a moving and uplifting story of survival in the first of a new series here on BBC2, Tsunami Prayers.
Enthusiastic entrepreneurs in search of a golden opportunity. A new series of Dragon's Den tomorrow at 8. Back to tonight, and the Learning Zone follows at 2 a.m. But first on BBC2, an eye on world events with Nighttime News 24. From me, Paul Reid, good night. Also tomorrow, after 4 weeks of intensive training, Ron Atkinson commentates on a major football match, and Esther Ranson interviews live on the biggest chat show in France. Will it be a coup de grace or a public humiliation? The final showdown on Excuse My French at 9. That's it for tonight though. From me, Paul Reid, good night. the ironically named Ski Sunday special slips in half an hour. First, foodies and wine bores your day.
You know, it's amazing what turns up when you do a spot of housekeeping for your 90th birthday on Friday. This is the Giant's Causeway BBC2 Northern Ireland style. Now let's catch up and see where the finger of sacking was pointed on You're Fired.
But first...
Comedy tonight on BBC2 that's getting a cult following. The Mighty Boosh at 11:20. Then...
On the Culture Show tonight, Bill Bailey with the BBC Concert Orchestra, an alternative folk.
Now on BBC2 and I with some strong language. It's the last leg of the race to the pole, and the Brits are on their last legs.
BBC2's rocking around the Christmas tree in half an hour. Steve Wright presents a special Top of the Pops 2 after a mince-pie nightmare for Ria.
George Best once said, "I spent a lot of money on booze, birds and fast cars, and the rest I just squandered." Celebrating a football legend here on BBC2 with a whole evening of programmes. George Best Night begins at 9.
This is BBC4 on BBC2, rediscovering our roots in part 2 of Folk Britannia.
British television makes way for something new. BBC 1, 2 and 4 are about to be joined by the magic number 3. Live on BBC2, the launch of the BBC's brand new channel. Johnny Vaughan is the host, and this is BBC 3.
These are just a big mouth. What he didn't want you to know in Terry Jones' Barbarians at 9. Now hit the red button as BBC2 returns to Chelsea.
And it's here every Thursday night from 9. On the way, Dara O'Brien returns to mock the week in half an hour. First new to BBC2 now, meet Mitchell and Webb.
So now it's Thursday night, it's BBC2 and the pedigree comedy starts here with some strong language and extras. Cue laughter. Donald Trump sniffing out The Apprentice USA tonight at 11:50. Now BBC2's taking the pieces out of the news to mock.
A grand entrance or two now on BBC2, so welcome home. Come on in and close the door.
Well, now on BBC2, we're at home in a room where you spend most of the time in the dark. The bedroom, a place of sanctuary, a place to relax, a place to indulge in enjoyable activities, such as sleep.
This reminds me of something. What is it?
That material? That's the same as I've got on the toilet seat cover in the upstairs ensuite.
What, isn't that white?
Yeah, it used to be.
So now they're leaving BBC2 in style. It's the final show from our favourite husband and wife team, and as usual, there's very strong language from the start.
Well, that's all for tonight on BBC2, and we're also saying goodbye to the current family of twos that we use to introduce our programmes. There's a new look from 10 tomorrow morning. I'll say no more, don't want to spoil the surprise. So if this is your thing, here's a small tribute to the outgoing twos, for which my colleague Richard deserves credit. I'll speak to you soon. Good night.
The changing face of BBC2. If you haven't heard, our numerical friend is off for a quick nip and tuck, and from tomorrow morning he'll have a fresh new complexion. So before we welcome the new, a celebration of the past.
Looking through to Tastes of the Caribbean with Planet Food at 11:30, you're watching BBC2 with something new for the weekend.
Making a meal of it when it comes to marketing the...
Greed, corruption and unshakable faith now on BBC2 with strong language. John Malkovich, Dustin Hoffman and Mila Jovovich star in The Messenger, the story of Joan of Arc.
Clarinet with embarrassing powers. It's that Mitchell and Webb look in half an hour here on BBC2. But first, some strong language and a bit of wordplay.
If organ music and Desmond Carrington rock your boat, don't miss whatever happens to Radio 2. Tonight, 11:20, here on BBC2.
On BBC2 now, 60s espionage with Michael Caine as secret agent Harry Palmer, keeping an eye on the spies in the Ipcris file.
Here on BBC Two, gripping drama right from the start. Your chance to get hooked by heroes with our special catch-up weekend tonight at 9. First, London has been invaded by an army of warriors.
So, will it be Rocket Ronnie O'Sullivan or Captain Ali Carter? It's live to the Crucible and the final of the World Snooker, now on BBC Two, introduced by Hazel Irvine. This is BBC Two.
Tudors in an hour, but first on BBC Two and the BBC HD channel. You've heard of the goodies, now meet the baddies. At Wimbledon today, the ladies provide the quarter-final drama and will be there from midday. But now on BBC Two, in a change to the build programme, we take a trip to the animal park.
Adam Hart Davis contemplates other worlds in the last episode of Cosmos tonight at 7:30. Now though, BBC Two takes to the skies in search of some inspirational gardens.
Celebrating half a century of genius, famous friends and even royalty pay tribute to a national treasure. Our Stephen Fry weekend culminates with 50 Not Out in an hour, after Horizon on BBC Two and Doctors in the Death Zone.
Now on BBC Two, Newsnight with Gavin Esler.
Graham Norton's Naughty Bits Uncut here at 11:30. This is BBC Two, with the last word on the weekend's football.
And at 7:40 tonight, Time Watch examines some of the myths surrounding the Titanic. But before that, on BBC2 Northern Ireland, the story of the iceberg in Natural World.
Yes, a big weekend of local sport to come, and indeed right now here on BBC2 Northern Ireland, Belfast is the place to be for the time trials of this year's Giro d'Italia. Taking us through the action, Jill Douglas.
Get set for an afternoon of sport on BBC2. We're live at the Crucible from 3 for the start of the World Snooker Championship final. First, to kick things off, Rugby Union.
Rugby Union later at 12:30 as Bath face Saracens in the Premiership. First, BBC2 brings you something for the weekend.
It's D-Day for the chefs from the southwest in Great British Menu in half an hour on BBC2 after Eggheads.
Staying with the snooker finals meant no time for Nick Baker's Bears here on BBC2, but we're back on track with a celebration of extraordinary musical prowess now. 30 years of the BBC Young Musician of the Year.
James May shifting gear. He's a guest on tonight's Have I Got a Bit More News for You later at 9:30. Now though, on BBC2, Dad's Army needs some new recruits. The election's looming, serious times for our comedy The Thick of It on the way at 10:10. Now though, on BBC2, it's to Telford for semi-final snooker action with Hazel Irvine.
Another double helping of mouth-watering offerings from Paul Hollywood. Now on BBC2, starting with a novel twist on an old favourite.
So can seaweed take a blackberry and apple crumble to a whole new level? Paul Hollywood thinks so at 10:30. But first on BBC2, Paul Martin's Getting Seasonal. From late spring to the height of summer, there's an awful lot going on now on BBC2 in the first of two slices of life in a cottage garden. Riot of colour and beauty now on BBC2 as the cottage garden reaches its peak.
More of the best bits from Titty Bang Bang at 10. First on BBC2, Save the Cheerleader, Save the World. It's crunch time for Claire. First, twice weekly, tonight and tomorrow, BBC2's reserved you a table at the restaurant.
Now on BBC2, with the arrival of a new agent, it's time to raise the game. It's punchier, pacier, funnier, and in HD if you've got it. Expect some violent scenes in brand new Torchwood.
Another new music experience now on BBC Two, this time from Mike Skinner and the Streets, which includes strong language. And if you want it to look as good as it sounds, head over now to BBC HD.
Oh yes, they're very much alive. The boys are back and see how they roll in the new series of The Wrong Man, starting Monday at 9 on BBC2 Northern Ireland. Italian-inspired indulgences for a festive party with Nigella in half an hour after Zoe.
All the thrills and spills on the slopes now on BBC Two. We've got all the action on the opening day of the Winter Olympics in Sochi.
On BBC Two, you shall see this more than once as we have double twin trouble with back-to-back Hello Hello.
After an 11-year absence from the Formula One calendar, the Grand Prix returns to Austria, and Susie Perry brings full highlights in an hour. Now on BBC Two, with a covert trek into Burma, it's Simon Reeve's toughest, longest and most ambitious challenge yet along the Tropic of Cancer. Now on BBC Two, and with some strong language, Stephen Fry is joined by Marcus Brigstock, Joe Brand and Danny Baker for QI Excel.
Yes, it all had us gripped last week. More twists and turns to come tonight on BBC Two. Gardening and food before that, and we begin with some big flavours from Paul Hollywood.
The week's TV that you definitely didn't see now on BBC Two. Brand new comedy with a twist.
Whoa. BBC2!
Now on BBC Two, we're spending the rest of the day at Wimbledon with some big names playing today, while there's also a wider choice of matches available for you to watch on the Red Button and Red Button Plus.
A special Goodness Gracious Me giggles to come in an hour, right after we take to the tracks for India's season. Get on board with BBC Two as our journey continues on the world's busiest railway.
A stack of Family Guy to make sure Sundays don't stop here on BBC Two from 10:15, after some strong language now from the man who knows how to party.
Now, to begin the Sign Zone on BBC Two, one tough mental and physical challenge with the Channel Patrol. Staring into the abyss, the journey of a lifetime for Kate Humble now on BBC Two in the Sign Zone as she heads into the volcano. Battle lines are drawn now in the Sign Zone on BBC Two on Michael Portillo's route through Scotland.
Into the Sign Zone now on BBC Two, Dara O'Brien fulfills a lifelong dream, meeting his childhood hero, the world's most celebrated scientist, Professor Stephen Hawking.
Who do you think you are kidding, Mr. Hitler, if you think we're on the run? We are the boys who will stop your little game. We are the boys who will make you think again. 'Cause who do you think you are kidding, Mr. Hitler, if you think old England's done? Mr. Brown goes off to town on the A21, but he comes home each evening and he's ready with his gun. So who do you...
And now, for one last time, enjoy BBC Two through the ages with some of our old favourites.
BBC2!
You're watching BBC2.
Oh, this is breathtaking, Tricia. What is it?
This is BBC2 logo, apparently, by Nobby Stiles the Younger.
Oh. For me, this expresses the zeitgeist of contemporary urban renewal.
One thinks immediately of some of George Formby's early lyrics.
Yes, it really says something. To me, this says...
Bugger off! Go on, bugger off out of it. This is BBC property. And now on BBC2, we begin a major new 26-part documentary series in which that fat bastard Alexei Sayle dissects the universe and life as we know it. Stuff.
You're watching BBC2, where we go over to the hospital for distressed broadcasters. Now sit back, hold on to your chairs, and, listen to that. Oh, God, I'm sorry. It's BBC One, our next-door neighbours. The walls are paper thin, they're having another bloody party. I've told them before, I've said, if you want to have a party, OK, but give us some notice. Listen to them. It's inconsiderate. That's it. I'm going to bang on the wall with my shoe. Shut that bloody racket up, will you? Sod off. Don't you tell me to sod off, you bunch of yobbos. Do your parents know you're having a party? None of your business. It is my business, you rabble. We're all posh at BBC2. We've got Umberto Eco coming round later. What's he going to think? Hearing Chris Tarrant and Noel Edmonds blaring through from next door. You lower the tone of the neighbourhood, you do, with your crappy quiz shows and your pop music, showing us all up. Shut it now! This is BBC2. Time for... Shut up!
This is BBC2. In a moment, we'll be stepping into the future for our weekly look at the world of science and technology with the Look Around You team. But first, let's take a look at the lineup for this coming St. Frankenstein's Day. Programmes for St. Frankenstein's Day on BBC2 begin at...